Christy Turner is our presenter. Christy is the go-to local expert for families living with a dementia diagnosis and the challenges that come with it. Christy is a speaker, a founder, and she's a founder of DementiaSherpa.com, and she's a community education instructor at Chemeketa Community College in Salem. Christy is an expert in creatively managing behaviors without drugs, and she's the go-to expert when you want to stop struggling and move on to solutions that actually work. She's had 15 years of experience in working with over 1,100 people living with dementia and their families. Christy has developed a system that helps families move from constant overwhelm and crisis management to confidence. Christy helps her clients stop losing precious time and start enjoying every moment. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Christy Turner.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out today and choosing to come in here. I appreciate that. I see 2 people standing. Do you need chairs? You don't? You don't? Okay. I just want everybody to be comfortable. How many family care partners are in here? Can you raise your hand? My gosh, wow. So I think there are like 6 of us professionals in here. How lucky are we that we get to be among so many family members that can teach us so much. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come here today. I hope that being part of this experience and part of this conference is going to give you the tools that you need and some hope and some comfort. And thank you. Again, I know what your life is like. I know how busy it is, and I really appreciate you coming here today. So I'm Christy Turner, and I'm going to tell you just a smidge about me so you have some idea about why you should listen to me. This is around 1978, which I think you could tell by the wood-paneled station wagon. So I was about 8 years old when I was first introduced to the world of people living with dementia, and it was through my mom. She worked in a community before there was such a thing as a memory care community, before there was such a thing as take your daughter to work day. I went with her to work. That was what was considered a life enrichment program back in the day, is take your kid to work, and I loved it. I loved it so much. So there was a resident. Has anybody seen that movie, The Green Mile? Remember that great big giant guy? Yeah, this resident was about twice that size. And he wanted to walk home to St. Louis, except we were in California. And it was about 100 in hell outside. And the staff was telling him, no, you can't go to St. Louis. We're in California. No, it's too far. No, it's too hot. You'll get thirsty. You'll get tired. You can't walk that far. Using reason and logic, basically, is what the staff was doing with him. And then 4 staff rushed him into a corner. Did I mention how big this guy was? So he busted out of that, out of the community, and started walking down the road. I was 8 years old and thought, I'll be helpful. So trotted down the road after him, put my hand out, and looking forward to this guy, put my hand out, he put his hand in mine, I turned around and we walked back into the building. And everybody was like, wow. And I had no idea, except that happened, right? So I'm thinking, I'm so clever. Does anybody know how this story is going to end? Okay, so I'm so clever. And then real life happened. These are my grandparents. It looks like I'm missing a picture here, but this is my grandpa, who was a genius mechanic. He had a gift for it. And my grandma, who was an amazing seamstress. That's another grandma. She was a gourmet cook. She taught herself how to play the guitar. That woman there on the far left, I was her guardian, so I call it like an elder adoption. She was amazing. She actually was a trailblazer in the Department of the Interior. And that's my grandma that had vascular dementia. She made amazing chicken and dumplings. And I was her guardian there too. That was another one of my adoptions. She she served in the WAC during World War II, and she was hilarious. So that was real life. I wasn't feeling like so much of a genius. So I learned what I learned through my family, and then obviously I became a professional about 15 years ago. That's what I looked like by the end of my first day as a professional. I sucked, okay? So if you were a betting kind of person, you would not have bet I would ever be here in this moment after that first day. I sure wouldn't have. I thought, this is the most brutal thing ever. And I hated how I felt because, well, besides the fact that I'd been hit in the jaw, that was one thing that happened. That was before lunch. By after lunch, I had made this sweet little lady burst into tears by asking her stupid questions. I'm sure, said something like, "Don't you remember?" So the genius thing was apparently just a brief flash. What I really hated is that clearly there were people in distress that were grabbing onto me. They needed my help. And I didn't know what to do. And I was excited about doing this type of work, but I hated that feeling in the pit of my stomach of they were really anxious. They were clearly in distress, and I didn't know how to help them. And then people would ask me in other settings, well, so what do you do? And I say, oh, I work with people living with dementia. And they would do this, the nose wrinkle, like I had just belched in their face or something. They'd give me the nose wrinkle and say things like, oh, that's just so sad. I don't know how you can stand it. That's terrible. Oh, those people, the lights are on and nobody's home, those people? So there was this amazing attitude out there about people living with dementia who clearly needed help. I wanted to do something about it. And so basically over the last 15 years, obviously I've done everything I can to educate myself and to be as effective as I can. But what I understood from the family side of it, from being a family member, is you don't have time to mess around with trial and error. You can't live your life with that feeling in the pit of your stomach every single day throughout the day going, I know they need my help. I know that I've got to do something here, but I don't know what to do. And so that's why I do what I do now, is to help family members get rid of that feeling at the pit of their stomach, to eliminate that and to help you know what you can do, how you can connect, and maximize, optimize quality of life, not only for your parent or partner who's living with dementia, but also for yourself. Because, you know, we all make fun of the flight attendant in the unlikely event of a water landing. And if the, parquet cup comes down, slap it over your own face first before you attempt to help anyone else, but that's the truth. If you go down, what happens to the person in your life who's living with dementia and needs your help? Right? Yeah, that's the question I ask where people are always like, that was nice talking to you, Christy, goodbye. I don't want to talk about that because it's a really scary thought, right? So we'll jump off that bridge a different time, but for today, let's talk about how can we optimize quality of life. Sound good? It's okay to say yes, that sounds good. So I found that there are 4 barriers to optimizing it, so let's talk about how do we get past them. And then, is arguing a problem for anyone in this room? Yeah. I'm going to show you 6 ways to stop doing it forever and ever, amen, okay? And then we're going to add 3 crucial elements to this. And then, did everybody know you have a superpower? No? Did you know you have 2 superpowers? It's true, you do. So I'm going to show you what those are and how to use those too. and try and get the slides to keep up with me. So what are we talking about when we're talking about optimization? There's that definition, right? To be effective, make it perfect, but we're talking about real life, so I think we can throw perfect out the window. Can we make the best of it? Yes, we can absolutely do that. And that's what I'm really passionate about, because quality of life is a highly subjective matter. So I go out there and do what I do and work with people living with dementia so that life can be as good for them as it needs to be for them. I learned years ago that the golden rule is not do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It is do unto others as they would have you do unto them, right? Because for each of us, I could probably interview everyone in this room, and you're going to come up with a different answer about what happiness means or what quality of life means to you. So we'll talk about a few different things here. So that's what it is, the best life that someone can possibly have according to that person. And I think we all want that for people that we love. So our first barrier is unrealistic expectations. Has anyone ever suffered from that? I know I recently had an experience I shared with many people in this nation about unrealistic expectations of how something would turn out. So it happens. It is painful when you have an unrealistic expectation, right? So that's one of the things that we want to get past. And then learned dependency. That's what I call, professionals call, well, let's call it what it is. It's geek speak. Okay, so learned dependency is I'm going to do it for you because it's quicker for me, which is great for me and not so good for you because now I'm setting up the expectation all the time that I'm going to do it for you, right? Is everybody familiar with that use it or lose it theory of the case, right? So we want to keep people as independent as possible for as long as possible. We can't do that if we create learned dependency. Has everyone been honest with themselves about the fact that they're grieving? Not very many people, huh? This sucks. When you love someone who's living with dementia, it's excruciating, right? And we can make the best of it. We should make the best of it because we're still lucky enough to have that person in our lives. But it's hard. And one of the things I always tell families that I work with is I'm never going to try to talk you out of your feelings. I'm not somebody who's going to run around and say, just slap a happy face on it. No. It's helpful, of course, if you can see the silver linings, if you can be aware of those moments and be in the moment. But just trying to paper over it is not going to help you or ultimately the person who's living with dementia. And then using reason and logic, and we kind of touched on that already. Never helpful. So what do we do instead? With unrealistic expectations, that typically happens because of a lack of knowledge, right? So if I think that a 3-year-old, for example, should know SAT words, we're going to have a very short conversation, aren't we? Probably because the 3-year-old's going to have sense enough to run away from me. But same goes for people living with dementia. If we don't know where they are in the disease process, we may think that they are capable of doing things that they're not capable of doing anymore. And so we set them up for, rather than success, we set them up for failure. Does that make sense? So one of the things, and I'm not saying you have to become an expert, but one of the things to do to overcome is to educate yourself. And one of my favorite tools is the FAST scale, which hospice professionals use. It just shows you and that's the link to it, and if you have the handout, it's in there too. It shows you exactly where someone is. There's nothing subjective about it, it's completely objective. Either XYZ is happening or it is not. That shows you where they are in the disease process, and it also shows you, this particular version, shows you what their mental age is also. So when it comes to, as a practical matter, when it comes to doing things like, should my dad still be driving? Right? Has anybody ever had the driving battle? So yeah, everybody's like, yes. If you are looking at something that's happening, you're seeing where your loved one is in the disease process, and then you see that that equates to a mental age of between a 5 and 7-year-old, does that help you make the decision? I hope so. So things like that. This is how this scale concretely helps. So I encourage using that. That helps come up with realistic expectations. And then learned dependency just happens when we are in a hurry. We think it's going to be easier. And just how many of us love when someone tries to do something to us? That is weird. People are sitting on their hands right now. Everybody hates it, right? I needed to be mic'd up for this. I knew that needed to happen. There wasn't a choice in it. The professional obviously was going to be better than I was. And I was still like, not loving it, right? That needed to happen. So in a situation when we're saying there's a doctor's appointment and we're in a hurry because we made the doctor appointment for 9 o'clock in the morning, and so let me just get your shoes on for you, Mom. We're setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting our loved one up for failure, and for a lot of reasons, right? Because maybe we have an unrealistic expectation about how long it's going to take to get out of the house. By the way, here's just a little bonus aside. If it takes you 30 minutes to do something, go ahead and add on another 30 minutes. And that's your starting point, right? It could be 3 times as long. But we want to give people the opportunity to do as much for themselves as they possibly can. So promote independence. That's how we overcome that. For grief, we're talking about what was. This person didn't used to be like this. My grandpa that I mentioned was a mechanic. He was so much genius that everybody in this small town that he lived in, if anything went wrong with their car, they would just, instead of saying, oh, you need to take it to Goodyear or whatever, or where he worked, which was Smith Auto, instead of, people wouldn't say that, they'd just say, oh, you need to call Eldon. And after he retired, he went to this coffee shop every morning to have coffee with his buddies, and people would actually go there to find him, to talk to him about what was wrong with their car. That's how he was. He was a genius. He got to the point where he didn't know any of that anymore. It wasn't even important to him anymore. Of course we grieved for that. Everybody grieves for what used to be. That's natural and it's normal. And then we start thinking about what won't be. How many people get married thinking that their golden years are going to be something entirely different than what they've turned into? People say for better or for worse, and I believe that they mean it. But until you have loved someone living with dementia, and that person is your partner, your equal, and you see the changes they're going through, there's no way to wrap your head around it, right? So of course we grieve for what won't ever be. And then what isn't right now? I can't tell you how many times people have told me, if I could just call my mom. If I could just talk to my mom. She's still alive, but I can't talk to her about the things that I used to be able to talk to her about. It's really painful. And the thing with grief is when we try to paper over it, it just doesn't work. So we need to manage it instead. The way to do that is to go through it, not around it, not smushing it down and stepping on top of it. is to go through it. It's normal, it's natural, and I hope that you know that by now. You may have heard the geek speak version of this, which is anticipatory grief is a normal and natural thing. This is what it's like in real life. It's painful. And just know that you are not alone. If you go through it and acknowledge it, you will actually be better off, I promise you. Reason and logic is part of executive function. Are you familiar with executive function? Okay. So executive function is that it's what allows us to do things like a load of laundry, which, by the way, is 18 steps, in case you didn't know that. And that's just how I do it. If you use bleach or some other things, you can add some steps on. But that's a lot, right? So it's doing laundry, it's housekeeping, it is shopping, it's transportation, it's working a telephone, it's things that we basically take for granted. Executive function is what tells us there's not enough food in the cabinet, which means I need to go to the store, and how I get there, and what I do once I'm there, and then what makes it okay for me to walk back out of the store without security tackling me, get back home, remember that there are bags in the car, food that needs to be put away, it could be refrigerated or not, right? And then what to do with it, prepare the meal. So in other words, it allows us to understand there's a problem, to devise a solution to the problem, and to execute the plan. We do that using reason and logic. If reason and logic are one of those first, excuse me, hairball. If reason and logic are one of those first things to go, why do we keep trying to use reason and logic down the road? We don't know. We don't know, but we know how to do it, so we keep doing it, right? Even though we know it doesn't work. So that's the problem with using reason and logic. And you just start using it with yourself. And remind yourself that it doesn't work. And I'm very pragmatic that way, so basically we just want to do things that do work, right? Again, I don't think you have time to mess around with trial and error and have that ugly pit in your stomach. So using reason and logic is usually how we end up in that ugly place called an argument. Because we say things like, no, Dad, you can't drive anymore because the doctor said you have Alzheimer's. Don't you remember? How often does Dad remember? Never, right? And also think about that. We're making a leap in our own logic because we're shorthanding Alzheimer's for not having the ability to drive, right? So, true story. I always tell this story when I'm speaking. I worked with this amazing family, and the man has Alzheimer's disease. He was living with Alzheimer's disease. His wife, not. They had the same argument all the time, and it was over driving. And there were just so many things going on with this. But one of the things was he kept doing the same routine every single morning with his wife's help, right? So she would wake him up, she would lay out his clothes, she would cook him the same breakfast, she would set it for him at his place at the table where he'd been sitting for 45 years, which looked onto their garage door. The car was on the other side of that door, and the key hook was right by the garage door. They went through this drill every single morning, so he would get up after breakfast, kiss her, thanks honey, great breakfast, grab the keys, like he was gonna head for work, right? Oh, by the way, his job required him to do a lot of driving because he was a sales rep, so he would see people in their offices. He would go to them. So, same argument. No, the doctor said you can't. Don't you remember? You have Alzheimer's. And he would say, that low-down son of a bitch doctor, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and I'm going to a different doctor, right? And she would go, oh my God, the language. She's not alone. She's not the only person who ever went through this. He's definitely not the only guy who ever went through this, right? So what do? You can't say just don't do it in that case, right? But that's where it starts, is with our mindset about just don't do it. Nobody has to tell you you don't get to kick your dog. You just don't do it, right? So we're looking for that level of just don't do it, where nobody has to cue you. You just know we're not going to get into an argument. But it doesn't always work that way. So in this case, what we did was obviously got rid of the car. That was very helpful. But also, let's have him sit in her spot at the breakfast table and her sit in his spot. So now he has a beautiful view of the patio. And it was just a gorgeous patio. Let's also get rid of the key rack, right? Let's remove that when he's not looking, slap a picture over it. How about serving something different for breakfast? How about not waking him up? How about not laying out professional clothes? How about golf clothes? That sends a different message, right? That's not going to work, that's golf time. So visual cues, which is something that we can use that helps us a lot with communication, we can use those in a few different ways, right? So we want to remove visual cues that aren't helpful. So back to arguing. We just don't, we're going to stop, right? Just do it, just stop. But remember this, how many does it take to have an argument? 2 to tango? Yeah, so if you're not going to do it, you already have a leg up, right? Now, the other thing that you can do is remember that these boots are made for walking. So go ahead, and if somebody wants to tangle with you on it, if they want to get into an argument, walk away from it. This is where I always say to people, would you rather be right or happy? And 75% of the people I work with say both. Being right makes me happy, Christy. I understand. But usually this is a binary choice, okay? So happy or right. And if it needs to get super twisted, then think of it this way. When you are wrong, that makes you right, which then will make you happy, okay? But the thing is, I have never met anyone who has ever won an argument with a person living with dementia. Ever. Ever, ever. Okay, so I doubt that you're going to be the miracle worker that makes it happen. So let's not get into an argument. We can walk away from it if that's safe, right? If not, there are still other things that we can do, like distractions work really well, especially when it comes with redirection. So if you are running toward the door and the door leads into a mud puddle, I don't want you to do that, right? So I can distract you. I can say, hey, there's coffee and cookies this way. But I'm going to have to lead you away, right? I'm going to have to redirect you away. Or it can be anything that's fun, which I think usually works best, right? Because if there's going to be an argument, it gets a little bit tense. So anything you can do that's going to disrupt that pattern is really helpful and a lot more fun. Don't you hate when you lose your train of thought? Yeah, so stop. Stop the arguing forever. Listen. And this comes back to reason and logic. So usually when we get involved in an argument, we think we're going to come out on top of that because we have the facts on our side, right? So raise your hand if you have ever won an argument. Oh my God, a room full of grown-ups. I love it. 15-year-olds will be like, all the time. So no, you never, ever win an argument, even when the facts are on your side. Why? Because if you love the other person, you have to go back and do some repair work to the relationship, right? For people living with dementia, most of them do not know they have dementia. You know that, right? 80% of people living with dementia have no idea they have dementia because they have another condition called anosognosia, which means their brain is telling them everything is cool and groovy. The other 20% forgot. Right? That makes sense. So that's just kind of getting sucked into a black hole that is never going to be helpful to us. So instead of saying, don't you remember, or if they would just admit that they have dementia, everything would be fine. If they weren't in denial, everything would be fine. Leaving that aside, if we just listen to what they're upset about, that's really helpful. So everybody think about a time in your life when you were just infuriated. Now, I want you to raise your hand if it was super helpful if somebody told you to calm down. I should have said, raise your hand if somebody told you to calm down and they were injured. Yeah, that's not helpful, right? When we say, calm down, everything's going to be fine. It's all good. You just need to settle down. Have a seat. What does that tell you? It tells you have crappy friends, number one. But number two, it tells you this person has no idea how I feel, what I'm going through. There's no reason I should have this person in my life for the rest of my life, or maybe that's just me, right? They're not building any credibility with you, for sure. And that's what happens when we try to paper over people's feelings. Just because someone is living with dementia does not mean they have been cured of having emotions, right? Not at all. So if we listen to what's going on for them and then maybe shift our perception a little bit, I think this is probably one of the cartoons for the ages, right? Especially this week. So a lot of times what we try to do with our loved one is to pull them over to where we are, right? By saying things like, do you remember the doctor said you had dementia? If we leave that aside and instead go, okay, well, what's going on with them? What does this seem like for them? Then we're going to get a lot further down the road. So we want to empathize with what they're going through. Listen, empathize, and then validate. And if you're sitting in the back and have the same vision that I do, I'll read this for you. It's do not deny another's perception. Do not argue with his experience. Do not disown his feelings. Specifically, do not try to convince him that what he sees or hears or feels or senses is not so. That makes people feel crazy when we do that. And people living with dementia already have a great deal of difficulty managing the input that they're getting, right? Making sense of it, staying in the moment with us, keeping up with what's going on, figuring out, is this really happening? And we know that a lot of times they misperceive what's happening around them. They have serious, real problems with visual spatial perception, for example. They quite often have hearing loss. Sometimes they take a fact from over here and a fact from over here, and they marry it together, and it is a brand new fact, and you will never talk them out of it, ever, right? So we can spend time arguing, or we can listen to what's happening for them, be empathetic, and validate their reality, which is not the same as agreeing with them, right? So when Dad says, I'm going to go for a drive, you're not going to go, okay, I hear what you're saying. You want to get out of here, so you should go for a drive. No, that's silly. But you can say, yeah, I understand why you're upset. Would you like to go for a walk with me? or, you know, I'll take you, where would you like to go? We can go a lot of different directions with that, other than getting stuck between a false choice of either we're going to get into an argument and use reason and logic saying, don't you remember, the doctor told you you have Alzheimer's, and fine, here are the keys, good luck, right? So the way we communicate with others and ourselves ultimately determines the quality of our lives. In our position as family care partners, it also helps determine the quality of our loved ones' lives. Okay, here's another little secret to not arguing. You get it? It's a good joke, right? So that's like the absurd non sequitur. Just completely change the subject. So it could be something like, I think your sister stole my purse. And you'd be like, a hummingbird? Wow! Right? Something completely different. So a distraction, change the subject. Again, I like visual cues a lot. I think they tend to work really well. And this is so funny because parts of my slides are just leaving. Okay, I had really cute dogs up there because those are also a good distraction. So that's another way not to argue, is a really good distraction. And my dogs are so cute. I was so excited for them to be a part of this. But pet your own dogs. You know, use pets in your orbit or borrow somebody else's. It helps blood pressure go down, both for you and your loved ones. So pets are a really good thing, but it doesn't have to be pets. And some people really love like an aquarium, looking at fish in an aquarium. They find that relaxing. It could be just relaxing on the couch and listening to music. I hope it goes without saying, cable news should not be a part of anybody's environment, right? Okay, so now we're going to add 3 crucial elements. We're not going to argue anymore, but we're going to add 3 crucial elements. And this is one of those things where people go, wow, that was really common sense. It's true, it is, but I think it's worth talking about when it comes to people living with dementia and how we interact with them. So who likes to be treated with respect? Yes. Kindness? Yes. Love? Absolutely. So this is something that for whatever weird reason, a lot of times gets brushed off to the wayside. And the reason is we think, not that we're coming up to our loved one and being mean, but we get into kind of a hurry up mode and we're thinking we don't really have time for that, right? Because we need to get those shoes on to get to the doctor. Or we need to get wherever we need to get going, or we need to get something done, or we need to get them in the shower, or we need to get to work, or whatever it is. It really becomes more about us. And so instead of bringing in that respect, kindness, and love, what we're communicating, what we're transmitting is hurry. We have a hurried energy. And people living with dementia are really, really good at reading our energy, right? So I have, and this was something that from when I was a little kid that I think did ultimately transfer over. My very most favorite memory care that I ever ran, after I left there, I came back, it was about 2 years later, to visit. So there were brand new residents that I had never met, and there were people that, I remember, there's a significant difference in 2 years, right? And people didn't necessarily know my name. In fact, I don't think any of the residents knew my name. They recognized me though. Not all of them, but a pretty significant portion. And this still happens to me when I go into kind of any memory care community, and it's because of the energy that I bring. I attract a crowd. And I love that because, and I think any professional will agree with me, it is so much fun to go into a memory care because you just get showered with love. Because people read your energy and they know where you're coming from, right? So I could go into a memory care and get a completely different reaction if I was like, okay, gotta be in here, right? So on just that smaller scale in our own homes with our own family members, if you can take that breath before you go in to visit, right? Or before you walk into the other room to have an interaction, and just pull that in, and then let it seep out of every pore in your body. You will see a dramatic difference. And again, I'm not saying that you're not doing this. I'm saying that there's a likelihood that you're not remembering to let yourself do this. You're kind of glossing over it with, we gotta hurry. And I understand there's a lot of mechanical, technical details throughout the day when you're working with a person who's living with dementia, when you're trying to help them, when you're worried about making sure that they get enough to eat, or that they get to a doctor appointment, or that they're just kind of generally occupied and happy. This is a huge step in accomplishing all of that, I promise you. So we want to add that, and that gives you the chance to be who you really are. It also gives your loved one the chance to be who she really is. Because at the bottom of it, you don't want to be this girl, right? But how often does your life feel like that? It can happen that way a lot. So let's get away from that. Let's see the difference in energy too. Big difference, right? Energy is contagious. And if you don't believe me, that's okay. You're wrong, but it's okay. Ask someone who has ever worked in memory care. Anybody who has ever worked in memory care, just ask them, is energy contagious? They'll be like, uh-huh, yeah. So, you know what? You don't, even though I'm going to show you your superpowers, you don't have to be on all the time. That's unrealistic, right? It's okay for you as the family care partner to have a bad day. It happens. It's okay for you not to visit every single day. It really is. You can call and get a status report. If you're having a horrible day, you've been stuck in traffic, the radio is playing that same stupid song for the 50th time, or it seems like the 50th time, somebody's just cut you off, they gave you a one-finger salute, you're thinking about you got to do the visit, and then the next thing is, oh my God, what are we going to have for dinner? I guess I'm going to have to stop at the store, and you know what, I really shouldn't have worn these shoes today, because holy crap, I can't imagine going through a grocery store pushing a cart in these shoes. Are you kidding me? Oh my God, the dry cleaning. You bring all of that with you into the visit, and you're doing it to check something off your list, right? This is one of those things I have to do on my way home from work or as part of my day. So I don't know why Mom's just being a pill. It was a horrible visit. Was it all Mom? Or did you bring something to it too, right? Were you this? Were you who you really are? You don't want to go there. So 9 ways to optimize quality of life is let's get rid of unrealistic expectations. Just so we're clear, no one looks like Glam Barbie. The proportions are off. We don't take care of someone living with dementia in that do, or that outfit, right? So we want to just get rid of those. And we can do that when we're looking at that fast scale, figuring out, and ask a professional. If you're not sure, ask a professional to help you figure it out. That's, one of the things that we do. We're happy to do so that you can have realistic expectations, okay? And educate yourself. Again, you do not have to become an expert. There are plenty of experts out there, but just educate yourself enough to know, for example, what's a realistic expectation, right? I have to tell you that, as it turns out, doctors are human. And that means they don't like delivering bad news any more than any of the rest of us do. And so I've been surprised the number of conversations I've had over the years with family members who didn't understand that we were talking about a chronic, progressive, incurable, terminal disease process. I lost count a long time ago of how many people have said, so are you saying my mom's not going to get better? Again, you don't have to be an expert, but just some education is really helpful. Promote independence. Celebrate all the wins. I know it's so easy to get caught up on the things that aren't going well, and our grief really, we can get stuck in a loop of really grieving what was and what isn't happening now and what will never be, and oh my gosh, definitely what's not happening now and how it used to be and it's not that way now. And we can get spun up into a cycle of anxiety ourselves and so much grief and kind of weighed down, right? Celebrate all the wins. When someone walks out and their shirt is misbuttoned, celebrate the fact they knew what a shirt was, they put it on, they had the fine motor skills to button it. This is a win. This is huge because the day will come when that won't be possible anymore. Likewise, the cowlick, or the hair's all done up in the front and in the back, it's a big bunch of bedhead. Who cares? Somebody went into the bathroom, saw a brush, knew what to do with it, did it, and then came out to show you. That's a lot of wins. Celebrate. Celebrate every last win. It's a big deal. And I know there's at least one person in this room that's going, but if I take them out in public like that with a misbuttoned shirt and a cowlick, people are going to think I'm a horrible person. No, they won't. Look at how many of you are in this room right now. You know how hard it was for you to make the commitment to come here today. Do you know how many of you are out there in the wider world? How many family care partners are going through this right now? People understand. They really do. It doesn't make you a horrible person. It's okay. A cowlick and a misbuttoned shirt is okay. Celebrate the victory. Eyes on the prize. Stay focused on what's really important, right? Stay in the present moment because, again, these things happen so quickly. And it seems like this disease process goes on for a long time, and it's true, it does. It's a very long disease process. But unfortunately, we don't know the last time someone's going to be able to have a conversation with us until they get to the point they can't do that anymore. We don't know when the last time someone's going to be able to say our name is. We don't know the last time someone can tie her shoes until these things have already happened. So when you can stay in the moment, you're giving yourself a huge gift as well as your loved one by just being present with them. Give up the arguing, please. No one loves that. It doesn't make your life better. It does not optimize quality of life for your loved one either. 3 ingredients. Use these 3 crucial elements, right? Respect, kindness, and love. They make a huge, huge difference. And then use your superpowers. And one of them is changing your perception, okay? Getting on the same page as your loved one. So if you do this, you have the field division of someone about midway through the disease process. And I encourage everyone to do this right now. And then tell me, and it's okay if everyone talks at the same time, tell me about your neighbor. What neighbor, right? If this is your field division, there's nobody sitting next to you. There's nothing to write on in front of you. If you do just one, you just take one away, wow, that opens up a whole different universe, right? So if we look at where our loved one is coming from, and we get on the same page with them, it really opens up a whole different universe for us to appreciate what's happening for them. And this is a true story. I Googled both of these things, okay? So to the left there, those are amaze balls. And that's a jar of awesome sauce. So when you smother amaze balls in awesome sauce, you get to that by changing your perception to their perception, right? Instead of getting into an argument. Because I can tell all of you right now that in fact, we are in Maui. And we are on the beach. And it is very exciting because it's warm, no fog. Are you guys getting excited? I could spend an hour doing this. I don't know how many people would be left at the end of an hour, but considerably less, right? Because I would continue to lose my credibility with you. Because clearly, I'm wrong. So who are you going to believe, me or your own lion eyes, right? That's what happens when we get into an argument and when we don't change our perception with our loved one, is we lose credibility with them. We want them to see it our way. And I totally get that. If they had the ability to do that, I don't know what we'd be talking about, but it wouldn't be dementia. When you can give this gift to your loved one, what's better than that? What can possibly more optimize quality of life than saying this, than bringing respect, kindness, and love into every interaction and letting that emanate from you? Has anyone ever been blessed enough to have someone like this in their life? To just be accepted? To understand that the fact that you exist is enough? You don't have to do anything special? You're alive and that's enough. When we give that gift to our loved one who's living with dementia, we optimize quality of life for both them and us every time. Every time. So implementing some of these things, you get closer to peace, right? And you deserve that. You deserve to not be stressed out all the time. You deserve to enjoy your relationships, your kids, your siblings, your partner, grandkids. You deserve to be happy, and so does everybody who's living with dementia. And that's really what optimizing quality of life is all about, is making sure that everyone involved in the situation is getting what they deserve. So you can reach out to me if you'd like. I always love to hear from people. That's my contact information. I'm going to leave that up.